Welcome to the Live Ready podcast. My name is Patrick Charon. I am your host, and the Live Ready podcast is dedicated to sharing the knowledge that you need to help you feel ready for the different challenges in life. So my guest today is Adrielle Gross, also known as Fit Coach Indy on her social media platforms. So before I tell you my personal reasons as to why I wanted to have Indy on the show today, I'm going to read you the bio that she sent me, which gives you a pretty good idea of who she is and what she's all about. So Indy is an Austin-based virtual fitness coach who is passionate about helping women transform from the inside out. Indy believes that true and lasting transformation begins with changing our mindset, and that is why mindset coaching is at the core of her coaching practice. Having been through her own transformation journey where she lost 120 pounds, Indy's clients benefit from her relatability. They do not only learn from her successes as a certified nutrition and fitness professional, but also from what she learned through her journey, the good and the challenging. Indy loves to travel, surf, longboard, and has recently started learning to play the guitar. If she is not at the gym or consulting with her clients, you will find her playing with her dog, Ollie, or biking around Austin with her partner. So what are some of the key things that we just learned about Indy? I think the main one, and this is something that we really dive into this episode, is the fact that she lost 120 pounds. And I want to point out that I mentioned this in the episode, but I want to point it out that I met Indy through a really good friend of mine. And I met her a couple of years ago. We were sitting around talking about who she was and what she did. And she mentioned that she was a hairstylist, but she was transitioning into this career as a fitness coach. And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. And she knew my background. She knew that I had a background in fitness and martial arts. And we're talking about all these different things. And all of a sudden, she's like, oh, by the way, this is a picture of how I looked before. And she showed me a picture of this very obese girl. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that the person in that picture was the same person that I was talking to, who was, super fit and just sitting there looking absolutely amazing. And she kind of opened up a little bit about her journey, how she had lost over 120 pounds and how she had done it on her own without any help, at least not in the first part of the journey. And so when I decided to start this podcast, I knew that her story was something that I absolutely had to share with people. Because I think we live in a world where there are so many people out there making promises about helping you lose weight, helping you look better, helping you do this, helping you do that. I think a lot of those are empty promises. I think a lot of people, and there's also trainers who speak from more of like an academic background than they do from actual life experience. And what's amazing about Indy is, despite the fact that she hasn't been a trainer for a very long time, she just got her certification not that long ago, because she's been there, because she's done it, she's in a much better place to help other people do it. And the fact is, she's proven it. She has a massive following on social media. She's already helping tons of women lose weight, feel better about themselves, feel more empowered. And so we dive into all these things. It's a bit of a longer intro than usual. It's just Indy is someone that I know well. I think she has just such an amazing story to tell. And I think she's just getting started. So I'm really excited to share this episode with you. If you are someone who's struggling with whether it's, losing weight or quitting smoking or any type of change that you're trying to make in your life, I highly recommend this episode. Indy's an amazing person. She's an amazing coach, and we get into some pretty cool stuff in this, so especially about her journey. Okay, so without further ado, here is my conversation with Adrielle Gross, aka Fit Coach Indy.
Hey, Indy. So thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I am so excited for you to share your story and to help people feel ready in how to basically take on this challenge of creating real change in your life. And before we do that, little tradition I'm trying to start on this podcast is to have my guest and I just take one nice, long, deep breath together, just as a way for us to connect, to get some extra focus. And I would invite anybody who's listening to do the same thing. So just close our eyes, take a nice, long, deep breath in through the nose. Hold that breath for 3, 2, 1, and exhale slowly through the nose. Awesome.
That's so refreshing.
Yeah, I love it. I just think it's amazing how one single breath can make such a big difference, especially when you need it. If you're stressed out, if you're feeling anxious about anything, it's just such a great way to get some focus back. So before I have you tell your story, I just kind of wanted to mention how we know each other. So the first time we met was actually when you stayed at my house in LA. Your partner, Kanisa, is a good friend of mine. We met many years ago when we were actually housemates in Costa Rica, and that's a whole other story. But and so when we met, you were pretty much finishing up your trainer certification,
Yeah.
your fitness trainer certification. And so obviously, as a trainer, this is something you and I talked about quite a bit. And what was amazing was I had no idea, but you mentioned how you had lost a huge amount of weight and that you didn't always look the way you do now. And it was quite the journey for you to make that happen. And I know a little bit about your story, but we've never really gone deep. You've never really told me about the before,
Mm-hmm.
right? I knew that there was a lot of really difficult decisions that you had to make, but we never really got into it. And that's why I wanted to have you on, because I think sometimes the best way to learn from someone is to hear their story and to
Yeah.
hear about the struggles and to hear about the challenges and the different methods and the different things that you use to make it happen for yourself. And now, as a trainer, you get to do the same thing for other people. You get to guide them on that journey. And as a trainer, as someone who's worked in this industry, I know how hard that can be. I've had people come to me and ask, can you help me lose 50, 60, 70 pounds? 10, 15 pounds, that's one challenge.
Yeah.
50, 60, 100 pounds, that's a whole other situation. And I think the struggle for most people is it takes time.
Mm-hmm.
You can't, there's no quick fix. There's no quick fix. It's a lifestyle change. You have to change so many things about your lifestyle that for most people, unfortunately, they struggle because they have a really hard time maintaining those changes,
Yeah.
right? They're trying to get to that goal, but they're not really willing to let go of the things that they need to let go of. So we'll get to that part, but first I really want to hear about the early days. What was it like growing up for you? What was it that, made that got you to where you were?
Mm-hmm.
What was it that triggered that desire to change? And what are some of the first things you did to make that happen for yourself? So whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Okay. Those are in-depth questions. Thank you so much for having me on here today. I'm really excited to share my story with you and everyone listening. Um, I grew up in a very chaotic environment, and health was not prioritized by anyone in my family. I don't think to this day anybody in my family prioritizes their health until the doctor tells them that they must, otherwise, they might stop living. And so for me, it was a really lonely journey, and also I didn't know what I was doing. Growing up, I wasn't in PE either, so I wasn't really active because my mom pulled me out of PE when I was in the 5th grade because I was bullied a lot for being overweight. And so I would come home like emotional and crying that people were calling me fat. And she was like, "You're done doing PE. You're not going to do it anymore." And I was embarrassed to change in the locker rooms because I didn't look like the other girls. And so she pulled me out of PE. And like looking back, I really don't think that was the best decision. But my mom had me at 15 and she was just trying to protect me, I think. So growing up, we didn't have a lot of money either. And so we grew up on like Top Ramen and Hamburger Helper and McDonald's because it's more affordable to eat unhealthy. And that was just what I knew. That's all I knew. My idea of like a salad was like potato salad, like those were my vegetables. And so leading up to my massive weight loss journey, I was probably 15 when I started dating my ex-boyfriend. And he was heavier set when we first started dating, maybe about 200 pounds, like 5'10". But by the time I hit rock bottom, he was at 450 pounds and I was at 250. Was the largest number I saw, the highest number I saw on the scale, but it was probably more than that at some point. So,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, take a minute there if you want,
yeah,
because that's a lot. And I, I don't want to stop you, but I think it's really important for people listening to understand that your story is really, really common, which is often we look at people that are overweight and I'll be honest, I've made that mistake in the past as well. And we assume it's a choice. We assume that they're just choosing to not live a healthy lifestyle.
Right.
But sometimes it's not a choice. Sometimes it's all you have. Like education is huge. Like there are parts of this country where you can't get healthy food. It's
Right.
not in the grocery store. It's not available. And if it is available, it's not affordable.
Mm-hmm.
And so what do? You do the best you can, right? To eat healthy is way more expensive than eating unhealthy. So for
100%.
people who have those limitations, it's not an easy choice to make, which makes your story, I think, all that more impressive. But okay, so your boyfriend was, you're saying 450 pounds. So
Yeah.
obviously you guys were kind of in it together, right? It
Yeah.
makes it that much harder if you want to change when no one else around you is going to support that change.
Right.
And so where did you go from there?
Well, even like you said, there wasn't access. And at this point, like to paint a photo, I was living in a RV in South Texas in the middle of nowhere, like an hour to the closest city. So there was no access to food. And growing up, you're right, I didn't have access to healthy food and it wasn't affordable. I grew up having food bank food, which was like donuts, cookies, and bread, stuff that's going to make us feel fuller longer. And so growing up, now that was like what I was addicted to as well. That's like all I knew. That's the flavor I liked. And same for him. And so at that point, when we were living in this RV, he was working a lot and there wasn't a lot of opportunity for work for me. So I was kind of just lounging around this RV. It was tragic. And I got very depressed, like just being in this small RV all the time. I probably was just eating all the time. I honestly have a hard time remembering where I was at that point because I think I slept so much. I was really depressed. But my mom wanted to take me out for lunch, and this is like the day I remember, and I tell the story all the time. She wanted to take me out for Mexican food, which is like my favorite. And so I was getting ready, I was taking a shower, and I stepped out of the shower butt naked, and I saw my reflection in the mirror, and I was like, holy shit. Nobody told me I was fat. Like I had no idea. It just like hit me. I was like, oh my God, is that my body? I had like body dysmorphia. I thought I was like a smaller version of myself. And so in that moment, like you said, I didn't have education around nutrition. So in that moment, it like in the matter of 5 seconds, probably, I was like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to become a vegan because veganism made sense to me because I didn't know what I was talking about. And I just knew that all the foods that I wanted to eat were opposite of vegan. So the only time I'd ever heard of vegans probably was like in conversation from some ignorant rednecks talking about vegans and making fun of them. But I knew that they were healthy, and I know that's not always the case now, but I knew something needed to change, and it was like connected to my nutrition. So that day, my mom picked me up and we went out to lunch, and I ordered beans and rice, like refried beans and rice, because I didn't know there was pig lard in them at that point. They were delicious. But yeah, I ordered beans and rice and I told her I was going to be a vegan. And you're right, nobody supported me. My mom was like, you're crazy. This isn't healthy. And my ex, he also didn't support me. In that journey, I was like, I'm going to be vegan for a month. And he made me cook him what he wanted to eat for dinner. Made me. I mean, he didn't force me, but yeah, he made me cook him what he wanted to eat. And I continued to eat what I thought was vegan, peanut butter and beans and rice.
And so, yeah, I mean, vegan does not mean healthy.
No.
Um, and no, but that's a mistake a lot of people make. They just, I think it's marketed as a healthier diet, but let's be honest, donuts are vegan,
Yeah,
you know?
can be.
So it's not like everything, carbs are vegan, bread,
Yeah.
all the things that you could eat. You know, you could go to the dessert bar and find a whole lot of vegan options. Um, but that said, the fact that there was a trigger though, right? Like you saw yourself in the mirror
Yeah, that was the trigger.
and you thought, uh-oh, okay, something has to get done. And all you knew was, I know what I know, and I know that vegan is something I don't know, so maybe that's the other option that
Yeah.
I can at least try. And so I'm guessing that didn't work out so well.
Well, I actually ended up being
Or
vegan
did
for
you,
4 years.
for 4 years, okay, but did
Yeah.
you finally figure out a different way to do vegan, or did it work? Did you start to lose some weight? Like how did
Yeah.
those next 4 years go for you?
So, okay, in that moment, I realized I was addicted to food. And it took me like maybe a few days to understand that I was addicted to the food I was eating. But my everyday diet literally looked like having a Reese's Pieces fast break candy bar every single day, 40 to 80 ounces of Coke or sweet tea a day, breakfast tacos, and like hamburger helper. Like it was, and patty melts like from McDonald's or Whataburger. Like it was not healthy. And so I knew that I needed to kind of detox from that food in order to see a change in my image. Because I wasn't really concerned about my overall health yet. I was just like, oh my God, I'm fat. I need to change this. And so as I started to cut out sugar. I went cold turkey on everything. And I don't recommend that to anybody listening. It was terrible. I went into such shock. My like entire body was sick for, I want to say like a month. I was just sick. And I probably was under eating as well. But eventually I started to read about how to cook vegan food and how do vegans get protein, and started educating myself. And within the first 3 months, I dropped weight. And I think it was mostly just from cutting out the sugar, honestly, because I ate so much sugar and drank so much sugar, and I had changed to water. And it was also so revealing to know how much sugar I actually was consuming, like in your coffees. Like there's sugar in everything. You just don't even realize. But this created a huge toxic relationship for me with food. And prior to all of this, I had struggled with eating disorders throughout high school and middle schools when it started. And that's another reason my mom was trying to protect me, because I had been caught with like trying to be anorexic or trying to be bulimic. And thankfully I had a support system that would pull me away from that. But I knew when I had a chance, I was already still struggling, especially with bulimia, and not really throwing up. I would chew my food and spit it out because I thought if I swallowed the food, it would make me fat. So when I became a vegan and cut out sugar, moving forward into like a year, I maybe lost 60 pounds. I would go to parties with friends or something like that. And I would take a bite of food, and when nobody was looking, I would spit it out. It was terrible. It was so toxic. And then I eventually started to heal that relationship with food, but I had to walk away from such a restrictive diet in order to do that.
And so, okay, first of all, yes to the sugar. I think that people, they really, and we still, even with everything we learn about sugar, people still assume that there's so many things that have sugar. And I think for me, it was in a nutrition class that I took in university, and they explained the process of how sugar turns to fat in your body. And it was mind blowing. It was like, if you don't know, you don't know.
Yeah.
Right? People think if I eat fat, I'll get fat.
Yeah.
And if I eat sugar, well, that's just energy. But then you realize that the fat you eat actually doesn't turn to fat. It's the sugar that you eat that gets stored, right? Because sugar is a form of energy. Our body has this very intelligent system that takes all that sugar in, uses what it needs for energy. Whatever's left over, it's a storage system,
Right.
which makes sense from an evolutionary point when we weren't eating 3 meals a day and we needed to hold on to that energy. Mm-hmm. But now we have plenty of food and plenty of energy, and we don't need it. So it turns into fat, and that fat gets stored on our bodies. And the other thing is sugar's in everything. You know, you think sugar means dessert, but no, the stuff you drink has sugar. Condiments all have sugar.
Yeah.
Even meals like frozen meals, all those things, they add sugar to what shouldn't have some sugar, but there it is. And so I remember I learned that, and I became this obsessive label reader. I just started reading all the labels of all the foods I ate, and I didn't need to lose weight. It had nothing to do with weight loss for me. It was just more, I want to know. You know, I want to realize how bad is this? Because then as I became a trainer, I wanted to be able to help people who were having that same issue. So it sounds to me like you kind of like MacGyvered your way into losing weight, right? Like you didn't really know what you were doing, but you made some pretty intelligent decisions. First of all, cutting out sugar for sure made a huge difference, and probably why you did lose a bunch of weight. Yeah. The spitting food out thing, I think that's probably something that more people deal with than we think. Because it's obviously something that people don't admit to. Yeah. I think a lot of people who have eating disorders, whether it's anorexia, bulimia, or any version of that, a lot of them are suffering in silence, and
Yeah.
it's not something that they're obviously going to bring up, and it's very difficult to share that with anyone.
Yeah.
But how did you eventually move from this kind of duct tape version of a diet and a weight loss program to something that was more sustainable and that made more sense? And also, when did you, because I know at some point you left, right?
Yeah.
Because especially trying to make the change that you're making and you're living in a place where that's just almost impossible. What led to that decision? Like, what was the next stage for you?
So I think that a lot of the times too, just to backtrack a bit, weight loss can be connected to trauma. I mean, weight gain can be connected to trauma or both. Either. It could work for either. And at that time, I had lived a very traumatic life, and the boyfriend I was dating was also very abusive. And so I probably used food as a coping mechanism. When I decided to choose myself and choose to focus on my health, which was like this radical decision that made no sense to anybody, I realized I had to do it by myself. And that meant leaving him and my family and everybody in South Texas. And I don't know how I got the courage to do it. I just knew that if I didn't, I was going to become them. And they were okay with being where they were, but I wasn't okay with that. I wasn't okay with what the future looked like. And so I removed myself. I wanted to go to school. I wanted to go to beauty school for so long. And I chose to go from like the very bottom of Texas to like Seattle to go to beauty school. And when I got to Seattle, it was really confronting how different the lifestyle is, because in South Texas, like, if you don't have a 40 ounce of Coke walking around or like deep fry everything, like it's a different lifestyle. Seattle was like an amazing place to be vegan. It was an amazing place to like learn about nutrition and health because those people there and that culture supported that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think, and it's not just, I think, you could have chosen the Northeast. You could have, there's a lot of
Yeah.
places you could have gone where you would have had that same kind of support. I do think that there are certain parts, especially in the US, that are way more friendly to different types of lifestyles.
Yeah.
Definitely the south of Texas is probably not the most open minded when it comes to different lifestyles.
Yeah.
But even then, I think even vegan, it's tough. It's a tough lifestyle to have in many places. Even places that are still open to it, you're still going to have
Yeah.
restrictions. You're still going to run into certain struggles. But I think the fact that you chose yourself, and I think that is a point that, and whether you're talking about weight loss, whether you're talking about any type of addiction, if you stay put, if you stay in the environment that created that problem for you,
Yeah.
it can be so difficult to break that mold, right? To break those patterns, because they are patterns. When you've lived a certain way your whole life and suddenly you're trying to make this drastic change, if you're surrounded by the things that triggered those
Yeah.
things in the first place, it's extremely difficult. And I don't think everyone would have the courage or even the means to do what you did. I think there are some people that unfortunately can't just pack up and go. And what you did, I'm not taking away from what you did, but I think it's just, but sometimes that's what it takes.
It was extreme.
Sometimes,
You're right. Yeah.
yeah, it's extreme, but I think sometimes extreme change requires extreme measures. It
Yeah.
requires extreme actions, and you need to be willing, even if you stay put, you need to be willing to stop caring what other people think,
Right.
and you need to be willing to say, well, guess what? This is what I want to do, and that's, you're just going to have to accept it, or unfortunately, we won't be able to have a relationship anymore. And
Right.
it's tough. And I know people who've done the same thing that you did. And in the beginning, they have regrets, but then they're able to make the change that they were looking to make. And then you can go back on those relationships with a new energy, right? You can go back to, in some cases, no. In some cases, part of that, some of those relationships are just done.
Yeah.
But then you can come back because you're stronger.
Yeah.
You're a new version of yourself that's more capable of taking on those relationships in a different way. Now, you get to Seattle. What were some of the things that you noticed that made it easier for you? And were there still some challenges that you still had to deal with? because obviously you still didn't really know all that much about healthy living. You didn't know that much, I'm guessing, about training and exercise and
Yeah,
all
no.
those things. So what were some of the main things that you struggled with when you first got there? And then how did you kind of piece all these things together?
Yeah, so when I first got to Seattle, the grocery stores were different, like you had mentioned before. Like there was so many options for me. And so I just started trying to cook for myself more. I was like a poor student at that point. So my diet still wasn't very healthy because healthy food is not affordable. But I tried my best, getting like pre-made vegan meals, and then I just had more access to like fresh vegetables and things like that. And so I was teaching myself how to cook. I also had no idea how to cook if it didn't come out of a box. And eventually I ended up just learning from friends and watching recipes, and now I love cooking. I'm like an amazing cook now. But when it came to exercise, so I'll backtrack a little bit again. When I got to Seattle, I had probably lost about 60 pounds, and I was a smoker at the time. And I knew I wanted to start exercising, but then I found out another thing was like stopping me from being successful. I was like, damn, I have to quit this now in order to like start doing cardio. And I had no idea how to exercise, right? I was taken out of PE, never played on team sports. I was told that my genetics made it so that I was just short and squatty and was never going to be fit. And so I got a gym membership and I would go, and eventually I had to quit smoking cigarettes. And when I did that, I gained 30 pounds. So we're back to like 200 pounds, and I was like 250, right? And I was just really unhappy. So I ended up asking a friend if he would go with me to the gym. And he took me, and every time he didn't go with me, I would go sit in the locker room in the sauna for like 30 minutes and just like try not to have an anxiety attack and then leave before anybody saw me. And it took like me going to the gym a couple times with him to feel comfortable, but then I just still wasn't okay. So I tried to do like insanity at home, different kind of beach body workouts. And then I ended up meeting more people at the gym and would go to the gym with them. And then eventually I made the investment to hire a personal trainer, and I got him to show me what the Smith machine did and how do I do a squat properly. And it just started building from there, like the community. I was drinking a lot too, and so my drinking had to stop in order for me to get up in the morning to go to the gym. So it was just this huge lifestyle change, but I liked the way I felt and who I was more being health centric than who I was being a smoker or a partier or something. And so I had to make that sacrifice, and I still miss that side of me sometimes, but I love who this person is now.
Yeah, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
I think the first thing, first of all, smoking, also ex-smoker over here, which a lot of people often don't believe when they get to know me now, because
Yeah.
like, what? How can that be? You're so fit and blah blah blah. I'm like, yeah, well, it wasn't always like that.
Yeah.
My early 20s were a huge mess. I started smoking when I was 15. I quit 13 years later. So I know what smoking is. I know how hard it is to quit. I know that for a lot of people, especially people who are trying to lose weight, the fear of quitting smoking is knowing that there's a good chance you're going to put on weight when you do that. And so that becomes a huge hurdle, especially if you've lost a bunch of weight and you're like, but now I'm going to gain weight back. And that almost makes people not want to quit. But you know that if you really want to be healthy, it's just a non option. You have to figure it out. I also love what you said about the gym, where at first there's a lot of people that would have quit. They would have gone to the gym, and that's what most people do is they go to the gym a few times, they have no idea what they're doing, they walk in there, they're intimidated, they maybe pretend to work out, and then they just stop going because there's nothing motivating them to go. Like, I'm
Right.
going to go there, it's going to suck, I'm not going to get any healthier, what's the point of this? And it's so easy to play those mind games with yourself. And I think the fact that you not only stuck to it, but what you said about community, about finding even one person, if you
Yeah.
can just find one person that will join you there and help you, that can make all the difference in the world. It's a huge difference when you wake up to go to the gym knowing that someone's waiting for you, someone that you'll disappoint if you don't show up, right? Or obviously, if you can afford it, get a trainer. But even I think there's a lot of ways to do that. There's a lot of ways to just find someone else maybe at the gym who kind of looks like you and is kind of struggling. Hey, you want to struggle together? You
Yeah.
know, there's ways. There's ways to make that happen. And so when did you kind of, and I love what you said about cooking. I think one thing that I've been successful with a few people is as long as you're counting on someone else to prepare your food for you, as long as you're eating out a lot, it's going to be really, really hard for you to create the change you're trying to create. You have to take control of your food.
Yeah.
And the best possible way you can do that is cooking,
Yeah.
is to really know, because you know exactly what's going into whatever it is you're eating. Even if you're ordering those, like, you know, they send you all the ingredients and then you cook it yourself, that's even better because at least you're doing it yourself,
Like HelloFresh
right?
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, something along those lines where
Yeah.
at least you're going through the process. Like if you don't have time to go shopping, that's fine, but at least you're the one making the food. It's
Right.
okay. Obviously, there are some really healthy meals that you can order. It does exist. But in the beginning, it gives you a sense of control, right? And it gives you this sense of like, hey, I know exactly what's in this meal because I made it. So I know that there's no additives. I know there's no sugar. I know there's nothing that I would probably find in some sort of frozen meal or some of the other things that I used to eat when I wasn't healthy. So
Yeah.
I think that's huge. So now you're cooking for yourself. You're learning more about healthy living. You're going to the gym. You're starting to learn how to exercise, which again, you got pulled out of PE, but even PE, let's be honest, it's not exactly exercise
No.
education, right? You end up just kind of being the last one picked in most sports. And it's not really, I don't know that your mom did you a huge disservice. Like it could have been
Yeah.
traumatizing, to be honest.
Yeah.
So when did you feel like, hey, I think I'm here? Like, or does that never happen? Like, but was there a moment where maybe you looked in the mirror, maybe you just felt a certain way, or someone said something to you and you felt like, holy shit, I did it. I got to that place that I knew I wanted to get to when I left Texas.
Mhm.
And was there a moment of like, is this for real? Like, I just want to know like how that went for you, because it's huge. Like
Yeah.
so far, like everything you've said is something that so few people would be willing to do, but you set out to do it. I know you now, and I know that you made it.
Yeah.
But was there a moment when you felt like I made it? I got this. Here we go. This is the next step in my life.
It's funny because you say that you know me and you know that I made it, and I don't feel like I've made it. And I'm like a coach. I think that we are constantly comparing ourselves to everyone around us. I know, especially women and in social media, you know what I mean? And it took me a while to realize that I had lost the weight. I had struggled, I still struggle sometimes with body dysmorphia really bad. When you've lost that much weight, you have a really hard time recognizing yourself in the mirror. My face looks different. Like my hands look different. I lost a shoe size. Like I do not look like the person I was. And so it took me a really long time to realize how much work I had put in. But also I did not lose the weight in a healthy way. And I want to stress that like a lot. I did not lose the weight eating enough protein. So I actually have a lot of loose skin. And so I have been doing a lot of backtracking over the past year and a half where I'm trying to consume more protein, and it's helped tightening my skin, which is helping me feel more comfortable in my body. And that's so important. But when it comes to when did I realize that I had done the work was when people started reaching out and asking me if I could teach them. And I was like, me? Help you learn about health? What? Like, I am not the picture of health. And then I realized that I actually am super passionate about this. Like, I love reading nutrition labels. It's weird. I go to the grocery store and I pick up stuff and I want to know why it is the way it is. I love cooking from scratch. I love educating people on nutrition. I love moving my body. It doesn't feel like work to me. And in the beginning, it did. It felt like so much work, but I fell in love with the process and the lifestyle and the community that's involved in that as well.
Yeah, and I want to really nail down some of the stuff you just said. One, fall in love with the process.
Yeah.
You have to do that. If all you think about is all the stuff you've given up, if all you think about is, ugh, I can't wait for this workout to be over so I can just go home and lie on the couch. Ugh, I can't believe I have to eat this stupid thing again. If that's your attitude, if that's the way that you're thinking about this, at some point you're going to give up.
Yeah.
Because you can't maintain that. You have to find a way to fall in love with the process. It's
Right.
a journey, right? And I think, and again, you have way more experience with this process than I do, but it's the same thing with like when I quit smoking. If all I would think about is the fact that I couldn't have a cigarette, then it was a very negative kind of focus. For me, it was I had started martial arts training and I had made the decision that I wanted to compete. I wanted to step in a ring and I wanted to compete. And that was not something that would be easy for me. But I knew that if I commit to this and I keep smoking, the chances of getting my ass kicked, literally, were much higher than if I quit.
Yeah.
And so every single time I was tempted, I would just close my eyes, imagine myself getting the shit kicked out of me in a boxing ring, and it was easy. Like I was like, no, God, no. And then I'd go for a run. And I would just run until my lungs wanted to come out of my body. And I was like, oh, there you go. That's why you quit. Because look how horrible you feel right now because of all the cigarettes you've put into your body over the last 13 years. And so I had to create these mind games. I had to create this new way of looking at it. And I think that goes for any change that you're trying to make. You have to figure out a way to shift your mentality in a completely different direction. Fall in love with the process. Another trick that I've used, whether it's for nutrition or other things, is if you think of the food industry, it's a for-profit industry. It's an industry that does not profit from you buying fruits and vegetables and protein. It profits from you buying prepared meals. It profits from you buying the cheapest ingredients because that's where they make the most money, right? So and if I think of that way, is that there's a bunch of people in offices somewhere trying to trick me into eating foods that are unhealthy for me so they can make money, well, that pisses me off. Hey, I don't want to be their puppet. I don't want to be that person who gives them more money. So I'm going to go to the farmer's market and I'm going to buy stuff straight from the farmers, or I'm going to buy just simple ingredients and I'm going to make my own food so that I take control of that. So I'm not buying into the fact that, but the box says it's healthy, right?
Yeah.
But the box, and there's so much marketing involved and there's so much behind that, that for me, that's a huge part of it. And then I add the element of the planet, and I always try to think about sustainability, and I try to think about different ways that I can be part of the solution instead of supporting ways of producing food that might be harming the planet. So there's so many positives that you can spin on the way that you eat and the way that you live your life, but you have to be willing to do that. The other thing you said was how in the beginning it was really hard, but because you stuck with it, it became something that you started to become really passionate about. And I think that's the other thing that some people underestimate is how hard it'll be in the beginning. But if you're able to get past that first really hard part, there's like a shift that starts to happen where all of a sudden you're living this completely different lifestyle. It's the lifestyle that you've always wanted. And you start to fall in love with all those different things. As where before going to the gym was super hard, now you can't wait till you go to the gym, right? As where before eating healthy was super hard, now you're super excited about the dinner you're about to cook. And that will happen, but you have to give it time.
Yeah.
And so you said also that people started reaching out to you and you were like, me? Like, why me? And I'll tell you why you, because you've done it. Because I know that you still have struggles, and I think everybody has struggles. Very, very few people think that's it, I'm done, I will never struggle again, right? We're all going to continuously try to be better versions of ourselves. Obviously, you came from a really long way, like not just physically, but mentally. So it is going to take time. And there'll never be a point maybe where you're like, I got this, it's done, I am the version of me I want to be, right? But the fact that people come to you is simple is because you've done it. It's because, it's like for me, if I would rather learn martial arts from an amazing martial artist who's proven themselves in the ring than someone who's read a whole bunch of books about martial arts but never actually practiced martial arts.
100%.
Like I've seen a lot of trainers that are really great at, training athletes, but if someone comes to them and says, I want to lose 100 pounds, they're going to go open up their books and they're going to look about nutrition and they're going to give them a whole bunch of facts.
Yeah.
But they're not going to be able to speak from experience. And I think the reason why I know you're just kind of starting off on your journey as a coach, but I think the reason you'll be very successful is because you've lived it. And when someone comes to you with a struggle, you've been there. You know what to tell them because it's like, hey, I remember that. Here's how I got through it. So what are some of the tricks, some tips that someone comes to you and says, hey, Indy, I'm super inspired by your journey. What are some of the first things you tell people to help them get started?
Well, I think with everything that's been said, I haven't really been clear on what has caused me to be consistent. And the consistency comes from you connecting with your why. A lot of the times people do not have an established why. Just like with smoking cigarettes, I wasn't always a smoker, but I started smoking because it was cool, because the community was doing it, because it relieved stress, because I felt powerful while I did it. Well, eventually I started feeling that way towards exercise because it was cool, to add more weight, because it was cool to hit PRs and my community was doing it. So you have to, in the beginning, people always ask, where do I start? Where do I even begin? You first have to ask yourself, why am I doing this? Why am I getting up in the morning? And I use like rent as a big comparison, because people get up and go to work in the morning because it makes them feel good about themselves. They have something to do with their life. If they don't get up, their lights get turned off. Their family's homeless. They don't have food. Your why has to be that compelling. If it's not that compelling, you're not going to follow through. And you have to start to identify with this person that you're trying to become. Because even me right now, who I am beginning as a coach, I have these huge dreams for who I want to become. So I have to continuously step into this person that I want to be. And if you're just starting out on your journey, that's also what you have to do. You have to close your eyes and visualize, write it down, find somebody that you look up to, use all of these manifestation techniques to bring that person into fruition. Because if you just show up to the gym because you hate yourself, because out of self-deprecation, because you know what's good for you, it's not going to compel you enough to continue to show up on your bad days. And a lot of the times people always say, well, I'm not motivated. Well, lack of motivation is actually a form of self-sabotage, because you feel like you don't deserve to be, or that you could never be the person that you want to become. So motivation is not something that you can rely on. You have to rely on your why, on discipline, and just consistency. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, you definitely answered my question.
Okay.
So how does someone find that why though? Like, because I get that, and I'm 100% behind what you just said. And there's an interesting, I'm reading a book right now by Dr. Joe Dispenza, who talks a lot about how, your past, your present, your future, it's all one. And often what we are is our present is based on our past, right? Who we were dictates who we are now.
Yeah.
And it also dictates our future, because it dictates what we expect from ourselves in the future. So the only way to create change in the now is to start thinking about the future you want, and to bring that future into your present. It's a bit of a mind twist, and it makes so much sense, right? It's like, and I think when I quit smoking, and I bring it back because I think smoking and eating disorders and eating addictions, food addictions, are very similar.
Yeah.
It's that same little voice that's going to convince you why it's okay to have a cigarette this one time, which is the same voice that's going to tell you it's okay to just scoff this bag of cookies this one time.
Yeah.
But then that one time turns into the next time and the next time, and the next thing you know, you're off the rails. And I bring it back because I think it was a book by Tony Robbins. It's a really long time ago. But it was basically that. It was, don't think about tomorrow when you really want a cigarette. Think about 6 months from now when you've actually quit and you're living the life that you want right now. Mm-hmm. Bring that life into your present. And that was my visualization techniques. That's kind of around the same time I started meditation. And I just started meditating on that. I would see myself in the ring. I would see myself competing. And that feeling of like, whether I was winning or losing didn't really matter. I felt what it felt like to be that guy, to be the guy who stepped into a ring for the first time and kicked some ass. And the only way I was going to get there was if I quit smoking. Yeah. So I think what you're saying is kind of that, right? Is like, figure out that why, whether it's through journaling, whether it's through whatever it is you have to do, a vision board, something that you can see that image. Because if it's too fuzzy, if it's not specific enough, it's
Yeah.
really hard to be focused on it. So how did you find your why? Like, was there a moment where you kind of, I mean, I think it started in Texas,
Yeah.
obviously, but you also had a lot of baggage there that you also talked about, do I deserve this? Like,
Yeah.
were there moments where you felt like you still felt like that fat girl in Texas and you felt like there's no
Today,
way,
I live in
what's the
Texas again.
point?
I still feel like her sometimes.
No, I get that. And I get that. And I think so many people do.
Yeah.
And is there, do you have any visualization techniques? Do you have journaling? Do you have, is there
Yeah.
anything that you use to keep, and your why will change, right?
Yeah.
Because first,
It should.
your first why is like level 1. And
Yeah.
then you're like, hey, okay, that's not enough. I want level 10, right? And so your why can continuously keep changing, but you always have to have one. You always have to have it there. And so what are some ways that you do to keep focused on your why?
Well, I think initially discovering my why was why I was not consistent, because I was doing it for all of the wrong reasons. I started this journey when I was like 19 or 20. And so I started this out of self-worth. You know what I'm talking about? Like, I just felt like I wasn't beautiful enough or worthy enough, or people didn't like me because of the way I looked. And that was not sustainable, because eventually there was days where I would be like, well, I should go to the gym or I should eat healthy, but oh, I don't care what people think about me today, so I'll just do whatever I need to be doing. It wasn't a compelling enough why. And so finding a why that's going to help you be consistent, for me, it was when I realized that if I wanted to be successful, it was the life I wanted to live. If I wanted to be successful, I had to come up and show up as this new person. Your question was, how do I stay connected to my why now? How do I stay connected to my why now? Right now, my why is so different than when it was in the beginning, right? Because I'm a coach now. So I actually stay connected to my why through all of my clients and my community a lot of the times. Days that I don't feel motivated, I look at them and they're looking for me. So I'm looking, I need to get up. I got to get up for these people, and that's compelling. And I know a lot of my clients use their kids as their why, because sometimes, like we've said this earlier in the podcast, showing up to somebody at the gym waiting for you will make you get up to go to the gym. And I'm not saying that you should choose their happiness or their judgment or whatever over you, but we have a really hard time choosing ourselves. And that's why you even start this journey. It's just so foreign to choose yourself. So sometimes finding somebody or something to put it on will help motivate you. But eventually, your why needs to come from a place of self-love. And my why right now is just so that I continue becoming 1% better every single day. If I'm not doing that, then I feel like I'm failing. I feel like I'm falling behind. But also I want to continue to uphold this version of myself that I've created.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you combine these two things, which is do it for yourself, but do it for other people.
Yeah.
Because there will be times where it is obviously self-love is important, but some days you just don't love yourself. Some days and the thing is you're the best person to convince yourself not to do something, right? And then in those times, what do? That's where having that support system, or just like your kids, or even knowing that the best version of you will then be able to maybe turn around and do some good in the world.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's that. For me now, it's I want to create programming that's going to help people be mentally healthier. That's the journey that I'm on right now. I want to create experiences that will help people get to where I am. Now, it doesn't mean that I have it all figured out. I still struggle with a lot of things every single day. But what I realized was I have tools to deal with those struggles that I've developed that can help others who are also struggling. And sometimes it sucks, but sometimes we have to compare where we are to where others are to realize how far we've come, right? Sometimes we think our life is hard, and then we're reminded, oh, wow, it could be so much harder.
Yeah.
And it sucks that sometimes it takes that, but sometimes that's what it takes. Sometimes you have to not compare yourself to others, but look at other people's stories.
Yeah.
And like you said, for you, you decided to become a coach because you realized, hey, I figured out a few things and I love helping other people get to where, not to where I am, but to where they can go, right? They might have different goals from you, they might have different journeys than you, but you've learned a few things along the way that now helps you help others get to where they want to go, which I think is amazing. Another thing I wanted to ask you about, because I think it's a new thing. Like when I was training people way back, this wasn't really a thing, which is really a thing now, which is social media.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's something that you've embraced so much so that I don't know what your TikTok army is at now, but you're like what 100 something thousand people.
Yeah. Like almost
Um,
160.
yeah, and I think if I'm not mistaken, I think you kind of started your TikTok account at my house not that long ago,
Yeah, it was like
which
really, yeah,
it
you're
was
right.
we had both, and you're like, hey, you should get on this TikTok thing. I'm like, really? Like, you're the one who convinced me to do it. And I remember we were comparing, like, look, I just got to 1,000. I got, and then, and then you just took off. And I think, and if I'm not mistaken, the reason you took off was the first time you were super honest.
Hmm.
And you, I remember, I think you created a little video where you showed, hey guys, this is what I used to look like. And I think that's what triggered this new kind of level of um, not I don't like the word following, but that's what we call it.
Yeah.
But right, and what I love about your videos is you just tell it like it is. Like there's it doesn't feel like you filter too much,
Hmm.
because it's and I think the reason people connect with what you're doing is cuz you're being honest about your journey and you're really speaking to people who need your help because a lot of people are struggling the way that you struggled. But I would be curious to know, does it also help you stay the course? Because I've often thought of social media almost as an accountability tool,
Hmm.
meaning that the more honest I am on social media, the more I have to represent in real life,
Yeah.
right? It'd be really hard for you to get on there and be like, all right, guys, let's do this, and then turn around and eat a Happy Meal. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, it would be really hard to do that. So, do you find that's helped you? Like, knowing that all of a sudden all these people are kind of paying attention, but maybe it's also a good way for you to kind of keep yourself in check. Do you find that's true?
Yeah, and I think what you said about like when I first was real or showed people I was honest was when I first started being authentic on social media. And I had tried to be like a quote unquote influencer on Instagram prior. And I was just trying to be like this pretty girl on Instagram and I wasn't growing at all. And then TikTok came around and I just showed my true colors and my business and my social media following has just skyrocketed since then. And I do think that it is so important, social media, to help keep me authentic because if I tried to be that person on Instagram I was trying to portray to be, I would not be able to be as consistent as I am now on social media because I wasn't being authentic and I couldn't show up. It wouldn't be natural, right? But social media is an accountability for me because these videos that I put out are usually about mindset. I always say like this work is 80% nutrition, 20%, 20% fitness, but 100% mindset. And so when I post my videos, it's usually me like talking to like targeting somebody's feelings, what they're currently going through. And I get messages about, oh my God, the messages I've received. Like, I've had people tell me that they were about to take their life, and my message made them want to continue. I've had women reach out and be like, I'm leaving my husband because he's abusive, and I finally have the courage to do it. And I'm like, from my 30-second, 60-second video. So, yeah, it does get me up. It does force me to be accountable because I had a call the other day with a woman on Zoom for a consultation, and she was like, I left a toxic situation because of you, and I'm so excited to be on this call with you. And I was like, me? She was like, yeah, I found you on TikTok. And so, yeah, social media does keep me accountable.
You're gonna make me cry. I think I just because there's so much bad stuff said about social media,
Yeah.
and it's true. There is a lot of really terrible aspects to social media. There's a lot of hate on social media. But that said, I think we also live in a world where the reality is social media. People are obsessed with it. people are, addicted to their phones, and especially people that are in a dark place. Sometimes when we're depressed, and again, I'm that person, I've been that person who fantasizes about living the life that I see someone else living through their Instagram account. And I know that's not their real life. And I know that they've got a whole team of people making them look so good and all those things. But you fantasize, you live in your head. The same way that, Texas Indy in her trailer was basically thinking about this whole other life that she
Yeah.
probably wanted to be living.
Yeah.
and and but the thing is like, if you're out there putting it, letting people know that there is hope, and that it's okay for them to feel this way, but that if they're willing to put in the work, that, there are people like you that can help them get there. That's huge. And how would you reach those people otherwise? Like,
Yeah.
before social media, how would you possibly reach those people? It'd be impossible.
Yeah.
You'd have to take out a billboard somewhere or put an ad in the paper. And even then, you wouldn't be able to do that every single day. Like, what I love about you is, like, every day I scroll and there you are in your car, or there you are at the gym, or there you are somewhere just putting some good shit out into the world. And I know it's hard because I try to do it. I can't keep up. I've tried TikTok. Like, I'm doing okay, but I can't keep it up every day. Some days I'm just like, ugh, I can't do it today. But I probably should, but I don't, because it's hard.
It
And I
is.
think people underestimate how hard it is to be consistent, and to just always be on, and always be willing to put out that positive energy and those positive vibes. And I want to say I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you for how far you've come. I think it's amazing. I think it's amazing that you've come as far as you have. I still think you're just getting started, which is so cool, because I think you still have so much to learn, but you've already done so much. And isn't it amazing to know that, hey, I just, like, you put a 30-second video out, sometimes you don't even think about it. You forget about it. And then you're getting a message from someone saying, hey, because of that little tiny 30-second video you put out there, you changed someone's life. What?
Yeah.
Like, that's the power of media and the power of positive content. And so for all the people that use these platforms to promote hate, like, let's try to switch that narrative. Let's try to get more of you, people like you, that are putting positive energy into the world and putting positive information out there and inspiring people. Because I think at this point we need to recognize, like, that's our choice to make. We have that power, we have the tools, we have the technology, we have all the things we do. What's missing is the intention. And so I don't know, I just felt like you are an example of a really positive way of using something that a lot of people tend to dismiss. I think a lot of good can come from it. So we're going to wrap this up, and I will definitely include the links to your Instagram, to your TikTok, and all those things in the description. But what's next? I want to know what's next for you. Do you have anything coming up? Do you have any, or how can people connect with you? Do you have any, like, a Facebook group? Do you have a way for people to reach out to you? Just let's wrap up by kind of letting people know how they can connect with you.
Yeah. So right now I currently do one-on-one coaching and I do group coaching. I do fitness, nutrition, and mindset coaching, and you can connect with me through all of my social media that way. And I do have an amazing Facebook community. We have about 3,000 women from all over the world in there. It is girls only. And you just join it. It's Independent Fitness with a Y on Facebook, and I'll have Patrick link that too. And I do like live workouts in there and live cooking tutorials, and everybody shares their recipes and their goals and their struggles, and it's an insane community. I'm so humbled that all of these women have come there because of me, and they support each other even when I'm not present in the group, which is amazing. And I think that could be a great tool for people that are starting their journey or continuing on their journey as well. And then, yeah, I have a couple fun things in the works, but I can't disclose that right now. So stay tuned. I am
Keep
just
people
getting started.
guessing. That's good. That's good. Keep people guessing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Indy, I'm so happy we could do this. Like, we're going to do this again in a couple years, and we're going
Yeah.
to talk about the empire that you've built.
Ah,
And I'll be able to talk about how I interviewed you way before, when everybody in the world knows who you are.
thank you so much,
And
Patrick.
it was awesome. And can't wait to talk to you soon.
Yeah, you too.